for a while now. I have seen you do poems, I have read your poems, I have bought your poems, etc.
You've been to my house.
Your house and all that kind of stuff. So what I haven't, I don't know, I feel like I've actually not properly asked this question, but nevertheless, let's get it for video's sake. How did you first get into poetry and spoken word?
I am kind of a weird case scenario, because I didn't. So I came into like page poetry and performance poetry separately. A lot of performance poets got into both at the same time. So I started writing poetry when I was about 14. We were doing Simon Armitage and Carol Ann Duffy for GCSE, and they took us to an event called Poetry Live, which I don't think they run anymore. But what it used to be is they would get as many like of the poets that were still alive that were in the GCSE anthology to perform their work live for kids at state schools. And I saw Simon Armitage reading his poetry like out loud, and like something clicked in me, and I wrote my first poem on the bus on the way home. And yeah, that was weird because I've never thought about this before, but that really sums it up. Is my first experience of live poetry was page poets reading their poems to a huge audience. Like there must have been like 1,000 kids there. Yeah, and then at university I got into doing, because I did English literature, I had the opportunity to do some creative writing modules. My first experience of performing was of doing a showcase at the end of my module, and then from there I sort of looked into the local performance nights, started going to open mics. So there was this like, I've seen Kate Tempest, I want this. It was kind of like a weird combination of a page kind of attitude being like inch towards the stage almost accidentally, because I know a lot of page poets don't perform at all, or when they do perform, it's a proper, highbrow poetry.
Well, on that kind of whole performance side of things, I always love asking this big, fun, broad question, I suppose. What even is spoken word? Love that sound.
Peter Tam. Got his book behind me, actually.
Start plugging books.
This isn't even my book. Yeah, I think, I don't know, I find a lot of the categories of like spoken word, performance poetry, stand-up poetry is a term that's typically used in the North and usually describes poets that primarily write comedy pieces. But I find a lot of them really false, because from my perspective, it creates this false dichotomy of page and stage. And I fundamentally believe that as a poet, you should be able to do both. Like, you can have bits of work that are like primarily one or primarily the other, or that don't work at all. So for example, I've got some very, very experimental page pieces that I literally can't read out loud because they're written in HTML code or like whatever. And then you have pieces that are the other way up, where the poem itself is basically a transcript of the performance rather than like it's. But I think you should be able to do both. So it really frustrates me, people putting themselves into various different kind of medium boxes. Like if it's a poem and you read it out loud, it's performance poetry. It's spoken word. You're speaking and there's words. Spoken word. Like, yeah, I find it really frustrating. Like, there's nothing more upsetting to me than hearing a poet at one end of those two categories kind of like slagging the other category off, especially when they fundamentally can't do it themselves. Like, have you heard Carol Ann Duffy try and read poetry out loud?
I have not yet. No.
Oh, no, it's bad. I heard a recording of T.S. Eliot reading some of his for one of my seminars at uni, and it was just like unlistenable. I was like, have you forgotten how words sound in your mouth? Do you have this kind of like oratory problem just in regular conversation? And then at the other end of the spectrum, you have like performance poets that are like, oh, all page poetry is elitist. I can't spell book. You know.
That's it. Well, then, for you and all of your straddling of both sides of that and all of that, how would you describe your poetry? And like, what do you write about and that kind of thing?
My poetry gets lost down the sofa cushions of genre.
Eh.
like, um, like, yeah, I've got one foot in one thing, and I don't remember who said this. The other foot in a Hello Kitty roller skate, you know.
Yeah, cool.
Like, yeah, no, I don't know. I write what I want to, what feels meaningful to me. I gave up trying to write in a particular way. Um, like I've had people approach me after slams and be like, "Oh, you're not really a slam poet, are you? And I'm like, I don't know whether you're trying to compliment me or insult me. Um, yeah, there's nothing more like disheartening from future slams than being told you're not really a slam poet, though, are you? After a slam, um, and yeah, and then I've had at the other end of the spectrum. People that have seen my work written down that go, you're trying to be too, or the worst one, someone that's heard me read a poem out loud, seen that I'm vaguely female looking, and has decided I'm now Kate Tempest.
Aren't we all?
Yeah. Yeah, if you're not a cis man, you're either Kate Tempest or Sylvia Plath. Those are your only options. Those are the two possible things you
Like,
can be.
screw performance poet or page poet. Are you Sylvia Plath or Kate Tempest? That's the
So
question.
yeah.
Well, for you then, like, are there like any topics you end up gravitating towards a lot, or is it straight? I can write about whatever the fuck I want and will write about whatever the fuck I want, or
It's
somewhere in between.
sex. I am like terminally horny. Sorry.
I didn't want to say it.
You know it.
Yeah.
No, I'm that poet. I'm like, and here is a description of my genitals to swing back round to the safeguarding conversation. um yeah, no, it's I write a lot about that at the moment, but I'm also fascinated with theology and mythology, ologies, all the ologies. Uh, yeah, um, I've written a lot about depression and mental health struggles and queerness and gender identity, and I don't think any of my poems are ever clearly like an issue poem. I don't set out and be like, I'm gonna write about being transgender is a bad example because I've definitely written that poem. I'm gonna write about being the fall. I don't know. That was a really bad example. I had like a brain fart, and that was
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah, like it's not like I don't like write my poems with like moral or an issue in mind. And in fact, like explicitly stating the moral of the poem at the end of the poem is like my least favorite thing that poets do.
Fair.
Like, oh, stop. Like you've written this beautiful, really interesting piece, and you've performed it wonderfully, and at the end you've been like, homelessness, that's kind of bad. I'm like, yeah, no, we got there without you saying that.
Well, that kind of ties into one of the things I've been asking people as well, in terms of when you are not performing or writing poetry, so when you're like reading it or in an audience for stuff, what about a poem or poet is like, okay, no, I like this, I like them, this what works for me? Like, is there something that like, oh, that's what you look for in a poem or poet?
I really like being given the space to think about something for myself. And I think it's particularly a problem performatively is being hit over the head by the meaning of the poem. I'm like, no, no, I gather this is a poem about um, homophobia, not great. Um, I think for me, the most powerful piece is kind of put something in front of you and tell you to go and think about that, not try and moralize that or rationalize that in some way to you. Um, yeah, yeah, and that's also one of the things. Like, I think um, very academic page writers can take like a few tricks out of the book from like very performance orientated, but poets by like looking into just actually performing their work like humans that are capable of human language as we know it. And and putting in like the the emotional impact of things, because I also think that clinical distance is a massive problem in academic poetry. They're like, more distance, and I'm like, no. That's no less distance. And then at the other end of the spectrum, I think sometimes performance poets need to take a step back and then and just give the image and the idea space to kind of breathe, and develop nuance in those spaces. Because I think for me, when you're constructing a poem, the important thing isn't actually what you say, it's what you don't say.
Well, like, seeing as we've been straddling the topics between both performance poetry and page poetry, it would be very remiss of me, especially given how recently it's been out, for me not to have any conversation to you about your book that you've just released, especially considering it's been released by one of the country's, if not the country's, leading publisher of spoken word poets. So you've got performance poetry and page poetry. There, I was waiting for it.
Ta-da!
There's the book.
My sister drew the cover. She's like amazing. Like, yeah, my sister's 17. She's gonna be an illustrator. It's great.
So,
Yeah.
sell your book again. Like, there's not been as many poet nights to go and perform it at, so freaking sell it online. Like, give us the pitch for the book. Give us what it's about, why we should buy it.
Oh, it's because I was raised C of E and also have a background in theological study in like a big nerd way, not in a kind of like Christian Union way. Oh. Like, yeah, so this is my retelling of the apostles as if they were modern people. So like, I'm not like, people use the term rewriting to talk about this kind of thing, and I'm like, I'm just like pulling it through time. I'm like, it's all here in the text. But yeah, people seem particularly interested in my standpoint on that as a queer religious person, because they're like, but that's like pushing like the two ends of the magnet together that don't go together. They should just, you know. uh, yeah, how do I turn 12 apostles into 14 poems? Buy the book and find out.
There is the pitch. There is your pitch there. And now,
told you I wasn't good at maths. Can't even count to 12.
We do words. We don't have to worry about numbers. Numbers is a whole other thing. That's other people's jobs. But yeah, it's kind of like, to kind of like wrap this all up, I suppose. Now, I love asking this question to people. Like, for people that don't know you, how would you describe you and your poetry in general? Like, to end off thing, sell yourself to the people, not the book, but just sell you, sell Jonathan. Who is Jonathan?
Horny sacrilegious bullshit.
I am very tempted to just have that come up as text. Horny sacrilegious bullshit just come
Just
up.
like coming soon to a cinema near you, or I don't know, the cinema business will probably have collapsed by then over Trolls World.
Don't do that. Don't do that to me. That's my baby. That is my baby. Cinema is my baby.
Oh, you want to see my baby? He's here.
See, we got a cat in the video. We're gonna get views. We're gonna get all the views.
He's so sleepy.
He looks so done.
He's always done with me. Okay, bye, Tobe.
Wonderful tail walking away. And on that note, I think I'm going to end the interview there.